Hey there! Are you a crime scene investigator, law enforcement officer, or forensic scientist looking for a Facebook community that understands you? Check out Taction USA's forensic product groups. You'll find blogs, articles, information, and community. For those of us in the investigative field, there are not many lines of support out there, but Taction USA is a company that was founded by law enforcement for law enforcement. Subscribe today to get access to exclusive content. Just look for Taction USA in Facebook groups.
Hello, once again, and welcome to Crossing the Tape, our 40th episode. This is. And it's the first part of a two-parter. But before we get into the deep waters, we figured we'd remind you all, especially since we had a little bit of an extended break there last month, remind everyone who we are. We're a couple, the best couple, and we met at a homicide scene.
Yes.
Where I was the officer responsible for scene security, and Hillary was one of the investigators involved in processing the crime scene. Mm-hmm. And we were married, a year and a day after that?
Yeah.
Yeah, told you we're the best. So, we've both got careers in the law enforcement realm. Myself as an officer and Hillary as pretty much everything else.
Why, thank you.
She's done it all, and she still is. And today she's going to bring you a dreadful story.
It's very dark.
A very interesting serial killer. A real creepy guy, but
yes, but he's kind of the poster child for all of the other serial killers.
Yes.
And I didn't realize this man existed, and now I'm wondering if other people already knew, and that's where they stemmed their crimes from.
Who was he inspired by, and who did he inspire?
Right.
It's one of those that you probably don't want to think too much about, but for the importance kind of scientifically and for, I guess, psychologically, for the people that study these guys, it's something that you gotta look at this one.
You have to delve into it for criminal behavior patterns.
Yeah, as awful as it is. So, please sign the crime scene log and join us.
For The Shoe Fiend, Part 1. Everyone, well, maybe everyone, has a quirky thing they like in life. However, some individuals have more than just a quirk or liking, they have an actual fetish. A fetish is defined as an obsession or excessive behavior towards a particular object. The majority of the time, a fetish is referenced in a sexual nature. Mm-hmm. For one man in 1968, Jerry Brudos, his fetish was with feet and shoes. He was so obsessed with feet, he actually began to terrorize women in the Portland area. And it wasn't for very long, but it seems like it was forever.
Yeah, I'm sure it felt like forever for the people worried about this guy.
Right. So before we continue, this episode, I would say there's listener discretion advised. There are very dark details in the case. I tried to leave out as much as I could.
While keeping
the importance of the point of, why we study these criminals. Mm-hmm. The point of criminal behavior analysis is to study criminal patterns to try to figure out why criminals do things and maybe stop other criminals from doing such things.
Yes.
Or apprehend other killers faster. Mm-hmm. So that's the purpose. But because this is a podcast and we're just telling a story, listener discretion is advised. Jerry Brudos was born in January of 1939 in North Dakota. He had one older brother. His mother, Marie, made it very clear that she had hoped Jerry was a girl when he was born, and as a result, she would verbally abuse him, put him down, and would instead favor his brother.
It's not his fault.
No. Though there is no valid reason for the dark acts Jerry committed later in life, after all, there never is a valid reason for any of those acts in any case, it may explain, or partially explain, why he developed certain behavioral patterns. Throughout his childhood, he and his family lived a simple life. His father had a temper, but was never abusive toward Jerry or the brother, and I don't think towards the mother either. I couldn't find anything that said, he was an abusive man. He just had a temper.
Yeah.
Their mother, however, was constantly verbally abusing Jerry. As I've said before, she favored the older brother.
She wanted a boy and a girl.
She wanted a boy and a girl, and she was disappointed that Jerry was a boy. So Jerry preferred the company of a neighbor lady who was around his mom's age. He would often fantasize about that woman being his mom instead of his actual mother, and the lady at the time, through the whole time he would go visit her, she was in poor health, unfortunately, and she died. And when she died, Jerry took this very hard because he was closer to her than his own mother. Jerry was also sickly as a child and suffered from migraines and pains in his throat. And I never did find what the pains in his throat were, but migraines are terrible. So migraines as a child would be awful.
Yeah, that's...
that's...
I think I've had 2 in my life, and that's 2
more
more
than
than I ever want.
Yeah, I get them too often, but I didn't get them that severely until I was about a teenager, not a child.
Yeah.
Other than that, he was somewhat an unremarkable child. And that's another point to probably why he became so notorious. Because even his teachers and fellow students found him unremarkable.
Just plain old Jerry.
Mm-hmm. Which may be a reason for his disturbing behavior later on. Is it possible he committed these unspeakable acts for attention and notoriety? Possibly.
Some do.
Some do. And we'll get into it more, but he was always described as unremarkable.
Which is just
awful. He wasn't unforgettable. He was very forgettable, is what people described him as.
Really just a face in the crowd.
Yeah, which is difficult when he already,
He's effectively shunned by his mother.
So Jerry always liked shoes and feet. So much so, it could be described as a fetish. He especially liked women's shoes and women's feet, and he showed signs of this strange behavior as young as 5 years old, which I thought was very interesting. It's very young to be that strange. The teenage daughter of a family friend stayed over and was laying on Jerry's bed. Apparently, she didn't feel well, and his parents allowed her to go sleep in his room to sleep it off a little bit before she went home. While she was asleep, he tried to remove her shoes from her feet, and the girl woke up and told him to get out of the room. Also at age 5, he found a pair of high heels in a junkyard, which the mind picture the mind picture I got when I read this for research was, this little bitty 5-year-old boy playing around in a junkyard, and then he finds these sparkly high heels.
Yeah.
None of this is going to be funny, but that little mind picture was comical.
He found those and was just beside himself. Right. He was so excited.
So he took them home, and then he put them on to show his mom what he had found.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, she became extremely angry, yelling at him, told him to take the shoes back. I mean, she went into saying he was evil. She flew off the handle.
He's 5.
I know.
I mean, for crying out.
I mean, yeah, he doesn't know. He thought they were just sparkly shoes.
He just thought they were neat-looking shoes.
She then beat him and then burned the shoes in front of him.
That'll set him straight.
In the research I found, she went off on him and screamed at him and then beat him and then told him to take the shoes back and then said, no, never mind, and just burned them right in front of him.
On second thought, I'll just ruin them.
Right.
So, I guess she didn't want him to hide them somewhere and keep them.
Right. I guess, but that's...
terrible.
For a child who's already messed up,
right,
that's going to be worse. That's more trauma, more of what molds him as the unfortunate adult he became.
Yeah, here, your mother, the person who should love you the most, you're going to take that thing you enjoy and destroy it.
In front of you.
Yeah.
At the age of 7, Jerry tried to steal some high heels from a teacher. And by the time he was a young teen, he began to collect women's underwear. He would sneak into neighbors' homes and steal women and girls' underwear. And it was around this time that he began to be aroused by these garments, and he would also wear them. So he's already escalating. Mm-hmm. And as we go on with the case, this is one of those textbook criminals where he escalates in every way possible. I don't know of any other serial killer I've ever read about that goes like through the step process of being one.
Like so accurately.
Yes.
Like doesn't miss a beat.
No. The only thing I couldn't find was that I don't think he harmed animals ever. You know, that's a very common trait.
That's the only serial killer.
That's the only thing. Check. The only thing, trust me.
And he's 7 by this point.
He's only 7.
So he's getting a very quick start.
Well, and he's at the age of 7, he's already aroused sexually.
Yeah.
So he's escalating quick.
And he's burglarizing homes.
Yes.
Stealing from women and at 7. I mean, he may not have fully grasped what he was doing at 7 and the criminality of it.
Yeah.
But
still,
the fact that he would cross those lines and not be afraid to doesn't bode well for later the adult he's going to grow into.
No. So before we delve into more of his odd behavior, let's hear a word from the National Investigative Training Academy. If you are looking for a career change or to expand your knowledge in an already established one, look no further than the National Investigative Training Academy. The National Investigative Training Academy, or NITA, N-I-T-A, has well over 100 courses with 70 professional development ones alone. NITA is constantly adding to their course catalog, and courses are focused on private investigation and security fields. Whether you would like to become a private investigator or you need continuing education for your investigative or security career, the National Investigative Training Academy is for you. All courses offered are 100% online and do at your own pace. Once completed, you will receive a certificate in that course. Sign up today at investigativeacademy.com. Make sure when you sign up for your courses, you mention we sent you there. We encourage you to get the best investigative and security training possible today. When you sign up, mention our brand ambassador code, BA2367. That's BA2367, and you can find those courses at investigativeacademy.com. Look for links in our show notes as well. As time went on, Jerry Brudos began to try to peek at women while they were in a state of undress. And he was extremely shy around women in general at this time. At this point, he was fascinated by women and women's clothing, but he was shy around them, and probably a lot of that because of his mother.
Yeah.
He then escalated his behavior to stalking women and photographing them without their knowledge.
Jeez.
Yeah. So he's
a peeping Tom.
Yes.
And like full voyeur.
Mm-hmm. The older he became, the more his fetishes and fantasies tended towards violence. And it was very quickly. In his mid-teens, he dug a tunnel near his parents' house with an alcove in it. This was part of one of his dark fantasies, and he actually hoped he would be able to entrap a girl.
God.
From here, his behavior, and what I read too, I didn't want to get too much into details because he's a very sick individual. But he had that alcove and that tunnel, and he would kind of act out fantasies and pleasure himself while thinking about it, but he actually was hoping to be able to get a girl down there.
Yeah, keep them.
Yes. From here, his behavior escalated, and he attacked a girl at the age of 16. He entered her room wearing a mask and holding a knife.
Jeez.
So he's only 16 years old.
This is the kind of thing that, like going to that step, that's usually the kind of thing that with serial killers, it's like, once they've finally had like the full mental break and realize they're not going to be able to get better over these fantasies, they're just going to need to act it out. Like, they don't do that until they're usually
much older,
like 20s normally, right?
It's usually mid-20s.
Yeah, that they finally get to the point of, I'm just going to have to do something.
Yeah. So he's only 16.
Goodness.
He then told her to strip, and he took photos. And afterwards, apparently it was somebody he knew, by the way. After he came back to her bedroom without the mask, his hair was kind of messed up, and he had a small cut on his cheek, and he claimed that there had been an intruder, and that the intruder had locked him in the barn at knife point, and he asked the girl if she's okay. Did the intruder hurt her? Gosh. So this is another level of demented.
Yes.
And I use that word very seldomly, but this guy fits.
And the manipulation that you see, and he's a serial killer beyond his years.
Yeah.
So he's 16 and he's going to that length to manipulate this person, thinking, oh, we're both victims. What was that all about?
Right. This would soon become his MO. He took several girls at knife point, took them to a barn, and made them undress so he could photograph them. He even went so far as to lock them up, change his clothes somewhere else, and come back before releasing them. And he would tell all of his victims that he was Ed, Jerry's twin brother. So, already, before I tell you more, already he has escalated from liking women's shoes, to stealing women's shoes, to stealing women's underwear, to wearing the garments, to stalking, to voyeurism, to now being violent, holding women at knife point, and now manipulation.
Yeah, forcing them to undress and photographing them.
Right.
And then he's
their
hero.
Now he's creating...
He comes back and saves them afterwards.
Well, now he's creating a fake person.
Right.
So, I don't want to deviate too much from this particular psychopath, but which also I think is a word that's overused, but I think we can use it safely here.
I think this is...
I think
the guy that yelled at you in the parking lot because you took too long to back out
is not a psychopath. But this, Brudos, is. So, but he really also displays a lot of traits that other serial killers later. And that's the thing. I had to look at timelines and go, oh my gosh, this guy was first. Before all these other ones that we all have heard about a million times. He would act shocked when he would come back and say he was Ed, Jerry's twin brother, and he would ask the girls if his brother had hurt them in any way.
Jeez.
He would even tell them that Jerry was in therapy and he was getting help. And at this time, he was not physically, sexually abusing them, but that will come later.
So he's showing consciousness of guilt.
Yeah.
He now, at this point, at 16, he grasps that this is not acceptable to do to a person. He's not a child who doesn't know any better.
No.
He knows it's wrong, and he's even telling them, oh, the guy who did this to you,
he's getting help.
Who's me, don't worry. He's getting better.
In 1956, he convinced a 17-year-old girl to go on a date. And he ordered her to strip, and when she refused, he beat her. And the story was he had met her somewhere. I think it's funny, everything I read said convinced her.
Yeah,
he had to convince her to go out with him.
She wasn't necessarily interested, but he talked his way into it.
And remember, this is 1956, and at the beginning of the episode, I said 1968 is when he became a killer.
Oh,
so
we're still a ways off.
We're still a ways off. We will not discuss any murders in this episode. This is just the beginning. So he convinced the girl and, took her in his car. And that's when, in the car is when he asked her to strip down and he would photograph her. She said no, so he beat her. I think he even broke her nose or something. Severe beating. A couple down the road heard the commotion, so I guess they had, parked along the roadway. Mm-hmm. Jerry claimed, the couple came over to see if they were okay. Jerry claimed that she had fallen from the car. But then as they started to ask more questions, he realized that wasn't going to fly, even with just this couple. So he switched his story to a random stranger had overpowered him and then attacked her. Police were called. I assume the couple called the police.
Must have been his twin brother.
Must have been Ed. So the police, however, did not believe this, and he ended up confessing. which got him arrested for assault and battery.
At 17.
At 17. So he's a juvenile. When police looked through his bedroom, because I think they probably had an idea, like, this guy's strange.
This guy's a weirdo.
And the girl probably told them,
he told me to undress, too.
Yeah. So when the police looked through his bedroom, they found tons of photographs of girls that he had taken pictures of. And each of those girls was contacted and interviewed. And finally, he was sent to Polk County Juvenile Department for a while. During that whole time, he was given a psychiatric evaluation. And, I mean, they gave him a very in-depth one, but it kind of sounds like they were monitoring him, too. Mm-hmm. He was there 9 months and was permitted to leave for school, which I'm surprised they even permitted him to leave for school.
Yeah, I know.
He was given numerous evaluations, and these concluded that he was depressed and schizophrenic with an overall personality disorder. Mm-hmm. So he was a storm upon a storm upon a storm.
Brewing. And it was getting worse.
Yes. It was concluded his sexual fantasies derived from his angst with his mother and women in general. Well, so,
yeah.
That's,
saw that one coming.
That's very common.
Mm-hmm. Some sort of parental, especially mother issue.
Yes.
And those are the people that end up with the most aggressive sexual abusers.
Yes, because they have mom issues, and then they don't know how to talk to girls, and then they feel rejected and yeah. So, in the next episode, we'll get into much more of his crimes and how he was caught. And unfortunately, there were a series of victims that had to endure his dark fantasies. Yeah. And again, listener discretion will be severely advised in the next episode.
Yes.
But I want to reiterate, we study these things in order to understand, to apprehend other serial killers or offenders more quickly.
Yes, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. Yeah. And there's so many commonalities that we see among serial killers that...
or any kind of abuser, too,
Right. The more you know about one, the more you'll be able to predict about the next.
Right, which is the whole point of the study.
And this guy is a wealth of knowledge in that field.
He really is. So we will get into the actual homicides in the next episode. And how he was caught and the punishment he got.
Yes. So we thank you for joining us. Please sign the crime scene log on your way out.
Stay safe.
And so long.